Hi, everybody. So this is a video about, sorry, I'm kind of a little bit cut off. I'm changing my camera today. Um, this is a video about how I go ahead and do my learning goals, set my learning goals and my criteria for a new learning journey. I thought I would do one for grade 1 in math, which is what I teach right now. And we are just about nearing the end of our other journey and needing to kind of think about where we're going next. And we just finished with a learning journey that was around exploring ways to count flexibly and fluently. And you can see that we've been working on subitizing. We've been working on showing our counting in different ways. We've been counting lots of collections. And we've been showing using different tools and representing numbers in different ways. We've been estimating. We've moving from counting in a pile to counting in a row or in a line. Now we're grouping and using arrays to do our counting. And we've been learning how to count by fives and tens and count on. We still have twos, and counting back is something that we are going to be working towards. So we're just kind of finishing off with this one, and I'm getting ready to set my new learning goal for our next journey. So I thought we'd still be in numeracy. We're going to be using the Ontario curriculum, and the new curriculum that actually has just come out. So I'm just going to walk through with you what I would do. I'm going to switch my camera around here. Sorry about that. Hopefully you'll be able to see. So this is called the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board Planning Template. It's based on assessment for learning and based on learning goals, criteria, feedback, all of that sort of thing, rather than the typical backwards design, which is, think of something that you're going to do at the end and then plan all of your lessons up to that. This is a very different. It is a little bit of front loading, and it really does help you unpack the curriculum and get to really know what the curriculum is all about and asking us to do, so that you can bring the learning about and elicit the learning, and you can be watching for the learning in the kids and then pulling it out. So it's a little bit backwards design, I guess. So I'm going to walk you through this. Again, it's the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, and this is a template that was devised as a result of a really deep dive into learning about assessment for learning over a 4-year period with about 15 to 20 teachers and board members and ministry level people. So here we go. We're going to get it started. So in this section here is where we have our intended curriculum expectations. So I'm just going to go through. I have my curriculum here with me, but what I'm going to do is write it down almost verbatim as to what the pieces that I'm wanting to pull out and work on next. So one of the things is read and represent numbers to 50. Make connections to, that's my little sign for connections, to how numbers are used every day in everyday life. Representing numbers using different tools. Compare and order numbers. Compose and decompose. There's some things around equalities as well. Not sure if I'll get to that point or not. That the seeing patterns in numbers. That's part of actually the patterning unit as well. So I'm pulling in from there, patterns in numbers. Using various tools and strategies. That's an overall one that is for math all around. Using and selecting various tools. Estimating. Coming up to a reasonable estimate and using strategies to do that. You see, magnitude is something that is talked about in the front matter of the curriculum, also part of the numeracy one as well. Something else that I like to think about when I'm talking about number is some key ideas that are some of them are in our curriculum under the teaching strategies or the teacher supports. Um, but some of them are just simple one-to-one correspondence, um, conservation of numbers. So knowing that whether I have the number five looking like this or I have the number five looking like this, it's still five. Or if it's close together or far apart, it's still five. Cardinality, which means that I know that the last number that I say is the amount that I have. And the order in which you count is not necessarily relevant, so irrelevance. Something that I also like to do, besides the key ideas and thinking of those really big ideas from the front matter, is any of our learning skills from our curriculum. So in our Ontario curriculum, we have things like independence and collaboration and self-regulation, initiative. So I'm going to be really looking and honing in on independence, I think, in this learning journey. I want to really work with the kids on that. And organization. So their organization of the tools and their selection of their tools and organizing of their work in front of them with their manipulatives. I can see organization being a really big part of what we're doing as we are working with numbers. What I'm wanting to do actually is I'm choosing these ones because one of the things I'm noticing that the kids are having troubles with, and they said they were having troubles with in their self-assessment from our last learning journey, is that they're having trouble seeing patterns in numbers. So I'm kind of pulling all of these things out. And although seeing patterns in numbers is one of the really big ideas, all of these other pieces here, I can see where we can look at patterns and relationships with numbers. And I know relationships and patterns is really what math is all about. So that's kind of my big idea there. All right, so those are the pieces of the curriculum that I'm wanting to kind of embed or pull out or elicit from the kids and work with them on. Over here in this next piece, this is the piece that I find the most valuable. Now it says no on here and do, but it includes thinking. I actually make thinking its own separate column, and I add a say column as well. And I do that because this is actually related to the achievement charts that are in the Ontario documents. So knowledge, thinking, doing is the application piece, and saying is the communication piece. So this caption up here, what do students need to know to be able to do to demonstrate that they've met these expectations? So I go back to each one of these pieces. So let's talk about read and represent numbers to 50. What do the kids need to be able to know to be able to do that? What do they need to be thinking? What do they need to be doing? And what do they need to be saying? So I'm going to go through that and see if I can think as I go here. So I know that they need to know that there are numbers all over the place. There are numbers in our world. There are numbers all around me. I want them to know that they're used for different purposes. I think I want to talk a little bit about how big a number is. This is this magnitude kind of idea. How big the number is related to the context. So, for example, if I was saying 3 is a small number, if it's the number of Smarties in my box, 3 is a big number if I'm talking about I have 3 elephants in my backyard. That's a big number. That's a lot. So I want to talk to them a little bit about context in our world. Let me see. What else do I want them to understand or know? I want them to understand the idea of conservation and cardinality, to know that when I'm counting, the number that I say last is the one that is the amount. cardinality and conservation, that my numbers can be the same no matter what they look like. So if I have five together, or if I have five spread apart, I still have five. That kind of idea. I want to make sure that's a good entry point for some of my early mathematicians for sure. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to go on to. Is there anything else to be able to compare and order numbers? What do they need to be able to know? I think they need to be able to know the concept of what least and greatest means, and greatest to least. And they need to be able to know with composing and decomposing. They need to be able to know that numbers and amounts can be broken up and put together. That's a key piece that they need to be able to know. Let me see. Anything else that I wanted to chat about? I think I want them to also know that math is all about patterns and relationships. They'll say it's about numbers, but yes, it's about numbers, but it's really more about how numbers are related and connected and how there are patterns in what we do. So I think that's a really key idea that I want to make sure that they understand that. All right, so now I'm going to go to this thinking part and think about, in order to read and represent numbers to 50, I guess under no too, to be able to read and represent to 50, I think they need to be able to read them, read the numbers. That's just a basic skill that they're going to be able to need, kind of a knowledge skill too. You could put that under do as well, that they need to be able to read the numbers to 50 accurately. It really doesn't matter where it goes, as long as we have things under each of these areas so that we know we're covering all the levels of the achievement chart. Okay, so I'm going to go to the thinking piece now. When I think about the thinking, I think about plans, the kids being able to make a plan, about making connections to things, following through on a plan, maybe selecting materials and things like that would be part of thinking. So let me see. In order to read and represent numbers to 50, some of the things I want them to think about is being able to relate numbers to a benchmark. So to 5 or 10 or 50 or 100. Actually, not 100. They won't need to be able to do 100. They only need to do up to 50. So to 10 or to 5. I want them to be able to notice patterns in a 20 chart, a 50 chart, maybe even a 100 chart. I want them to be able to notice and recognize patterns like skip counting patterns, both orally and in written. So when they see them written down, what do they notice that those patterns might be? I think maybe, let's see, what about representing numbers? I want them to be able to choose a tool. We talked lots about tools. We talked lots about 10 charts and tallies and arrays, and we're working on rec and recs now. We talked about dice dots so that they can they can now recognize those and they can represent numbers. We've been working on numbers to 20, but we probably will be working on now going up to 50. So choose a tool to best suit the task that they have. What else do they need to be able to think about? I think they need to be able to think about how numbers or amounts are bigger or smaller or greater or least. If they're composing and decomposing, let me just think about that one for a second. I'm going to come back to that one a little bit. I think I want them to be able to tell me how two numbers are the same and different. Let me see what else might I want them to do. Did I say something about a benchmark over here? I think I did talk about relate numbers to a benchmark and connect them. I want them to be able to do some visualizing of a tool or an amount to help them with some patterns and help them with their representing. Visualizing is a really key piece in math as well. Keep underline that one there too, because I think that's really important. This is a really big idea. How numbers are related depends on the context. Okay, let me just see what else I can think about. Oh, I know. I want them to be starting to recognize patterns in addition. So things like zero the hero, that's what I call it, the effect that zero has, adding one or taking one away. We might even get into some doubles. They might notice some doubles as we work with rec and recs and things like that and see relationships with doubles and how that might be connected to skip counting. So I'm hoping that might come out. All right, so let's go on to the do part. I'm just going to pause for a second. Okay, so looking at the do section. So in order to read and represent numbers to 50, what will the children need to be doing? They need to be they'll be needing to skip count by twos, fives, and tens to 50 or 100. They're going to need to be able to count backwards, count back and on. They're going to need to be able to use a tool efficiently and purposefully to help them with their composing and decomposing or with their comparing and ordering. They're going to need to be able to make a reasonable estimate and maybe using some patterns when they're doing that from what did they learn before, previous estimate, and now a new estimate. So maybe using prior knowledge. They're going to need to decompose and see patterns when they decompose. So seeing things like the flip-flop pattern, so 2 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 2. Maybe seeing zero the hero patterns, 0 plus 1. Maybe they might be seeing patterns when you add 10 to a number. Or maybe they might be seeing patterns as they decompose, so 0 and 5, 1 plus 4, 2 plus 3, these kinds of patterns in addition. So decompose and compose and kind of recognize those patterns while they're doing that. One of the things that I think I want to make sure that they do, and this is a big idea in math, is when I'm doing my assessing and doing my watching and talking and supporting and nudging, is the concept of concrete, C for concrete, which is real life tools or manipulatives that they're actually manipulating and moving around. The concrete representational, which is when they might be using tools like a 10 frame and they're moving things around. So they're still representing things, real ideas with a tool, so that's a bit of an organization. And then representational is when they will be drawing with their tools or drawing and representing with their materials. And then abstract, which is the numerical piece. So they're using equations, that sort of idea. And I want to think about that progression as I'm watching and listening and working with the kids. So this is a big piece I want to keep in mind because kids will be decomposing. Some of them will be decomposing at this stage or this stage or this stage or this stage. Some of them will be counting at any one of these kind of stages. Some of them will be looking at patterns at any of those kind of stages too. So I want to think about that. When I think about the say section, I think lots about the language. What is it that I want them to be saying? What language am I going to do I want them to be able to use? So I want them to use words like decompose and compose. That's good math language to be using. Pattern, related or relationship, connection. I can make a connection between some numbers. They might be using words like decades and teens, single or double digit. Hopefully they'll be using the word estimate and reasonable. They might be using the word about when they're estimating. Then I'm hoping they're going to use some strategies like zero the hero. I'm hoping that they're going to be using doubles, the word doubles, or even half. Sometimes they might be using half. You never know. Count on. I counted on, or I counted back. Skip counting. I hope they'll use that term at some point. The word subitize. That's a big word in our class right now. We've been working on subitizing and visualize. So as they're talking about their math, I hope they'll be using the word independent, support. I hope they'll be using the names of their tools, the tool names. I used a rec and rec to help me, or I used the 10 frames. One thing I wanted to actually add over here now that I think about it, because if I'm going through this, I'm thinking, initiative might be something that we are going to be working on. We've talked a lot about going through the dip and getting frustrated and ways that you can get out of the dip in math or in any way. So I'm wondering if maybe they might say the dip or persevere or strategies to help them get out of that. All right, so that's lots and lots of thinking about all of these areas and kind of breaking it up. So I took the curriculum, I kind of exploded it up and thought about a kind of divergent thinking about how it's all connected and what it actually means. And now I'm going to kind of try and pull it all back together and think about how I can put all of this information right here into one sentence that is student friendly. So this often takes me a long time. So I will wordsmith this maybe about 4 or 5 times until I come up with a learning goal that encompasses every single thing up here, or almost every single thing. So I'm going to start my learning goal with we are working on. I don't like to say we are learning to, because I just find learning to kind of implies that there's an end, that we did learn it, but we're always working on something. It's a never ending journey. So I like to use we are working on, because not everybody's going to get to that learning goal, or some of them will and some of them won't. So we are working on, let me just think about what I'm doing when I want to say seeing. We're kind of talking a lot about these patterns and relationships. So I want to have that in relationships, maybe. Relationships, maybe patterns I want to have in there. I think I'm just going to say noticing instead of seeing. We've talked lots about noticing in some of our other areas of the curriculum. Like in reading, we've been working on noticing details. Showing, we're going to be showing our thinking. We're going to be showing decomposing. We're going to be showing our estimates. We're going to be showing our counting. Showing how things are the same. Showing using tools. So I think showing is good there. I'm going to say describing as well. So I think there's lots of that say part in there. So describing. See, we are working on noticing, showing, and describing relationships in patterns. and patterns in numbers. I might even say and amounts. Kind of forget, kids sometimes forget that numbers actually mean an amount of things. Sometimes they're just that arbitrary picture of like a five. And kids don't know that a five or necessarily realize that a five actually has meaning. One of those fun things to do is to ask your kids and say, show me five. And a lot of the kids will show you like the numeral five instead of the amount of five. It just shows you how much we are geared towards this whole procedural kind of idea and not really thinking about what five means. Let me see. I'm going to be using these. I want to be doing lots of problem solving too. So I'm going to say, and we're going to use the relationships to solve math stories and problems. Let me see. We are working on noticing, showing, and describing relationships and patterns in numbers and amounts, and using the relationships to solve math stories and problems. Okay, that might be okay. I think I might go back and fix that up a wee little bit later on, but what I do to self-check myself is I go back and I look at each of these different areas and see whether or not it is inherent somewhere in my learning goal. So I look at math is all about patterns and relationships. Yep, I've got patterns and relationships in there for sure. That's going to be a big idea. There are numbers all around me and they're different purposes. Oh, see, I don't have that in there. So I want to see if I can go back and put that somewhere in my learning goal. Maybe I'm just going to take out amounts and I'm going to say in numbers around in my environment. In my environment. And that gets at that piece. How numbers related is how big a number is related to the context. So I think that will be part of that. That's environment. I'll have conversations around that. Conservation and cardinality. Not sure where that is. Least to greatest. That will be in the comparing part. Oh, do I have comparing in there? Well, comparing is a kind of relationship. So I think, yes, I will connect that with there. So you see how I go back and I'm checking every single one to make sure that it's in there, and I'll go back and adjust this and I'll just keep wordsmithing that idea. All right, the next part is developing the success criteria. And this is kind of tricky because it's great for you to be able to go into a learning journey having an idea of what the success criteria is. But in my experience, I don't cover all the success criteria in a learning journey because it doesn't come up with my kids, or because we realize that maybe I can hold on to that criteria and put it elsewhere. Sometimes you find that kids will add criteria to what you've got too. So remember that this is kind of a working document, right? It can be changed. Especially the criteria as you learn more and the kids learn more about things. I've had kids add things to our list of criteria as we go, even as young as grade 1 and grade 2. The thing that we don't want to try to negotiate or change is our learning goal. Once we get into it, we want to try to stick to that. So let's kind of really work hard to make sure we have a solid learning goal, because that's what's going to guide you. It helps you stay aligned and it helps the kids stay aligned as well. And the kids will learn this really, really well. They'll know exactly what it is that they're working on. And I'll share some of those in this piece. I think right now that's almost a 30-minute video. So I think what I'll do is I'll stop it there and I'll do a second video and talk a little bit about how I go from learning goals and develop that success criteria after I've done now all of this piece. All right, so I will stop there because that's lots of talking. And let's switch it back around to me. Here we go. And say thanks for listening. Hope that was helpful. I know that developing learning goals, some people are taught, and some people have maybe just figured out that you can just go and say, oh, I'm going to take this specific expectation or this overall expectation, and I'm going to say that's my learning goal, and I'm going to post it, and there it is, that's my learning goal. But learning goals are so powerful. They really, really are. And I think it's something well worth delving into and finding lots more about, and how you can use it to guide yourself, how you can use it to help understand what the curriculum is, how the kids will be able to use it and how you can implement it with your kids all the way through the learning journey. All right, so I'm going to stop there and I will make a next video in another day or two about the success criteria for this very same learning journey about math. Hope it was helpful.